how can I elevate the care that I'm giving to my patients, and how can I really connect with them and give them a world-class experience? If you can take a patient that likes you or even loves you and light a bigger fire underneath them, they are 100% going to be the champions for your practice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. First off, I want to thank my sponsors, both Dental and Tao and the Doc Sites, for their support, allowing me to come to your inbox every single Friday at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today's episode is with Shawn Zajas from Zana, and we're going to be talking about his products, some other things related to dentistry. First, let me read Shawn's bio. Shawn is the visionary leader of Zana. Growing up in a family dental supply business, he was able to see the evolution of dentistry over the past 20 years, and more recently, the gaps in the current electric toothbrush model. Entrepreneurially at heart, he started 3 businesses and is completely obsessed with innovation that disrupts industries. He's passionate about creating and pioneering positive change in dentistry. As the father of 5 children, Shawn enjoys developing the unique strengths of those around him. Viewing life as a grand adventure, Shawn loves meeting the people that make dentistry great. Outside of work, you will find him with his family playing chess, exploring the wild, enjoying a kitchen creation from his kids, or on a wall, rock climbing. He is also the host of 2 podcasts, Innovation in Dentistry and the Authentic Dentist Podcast. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Shawn Zajas. Shawn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Len Tao. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you mentioned rock climbing, and I just, we were texting back a few weeks ago, and you had said, I'm out rock climbing. How often do you rock climb? I'm very intrigued by that wall rock climbing. So can you just talk about that real briefly?
So we rock climb as a family about 3 times a week. And there's 2 gyms that we go to, same ownership, but one is a top rope gym, which means it has like a vertical 50 foot. So you're attached to a rope. And the other is strictly a bouldering gym, which means the walls are 12 to 15 feet high and there's just pads all around. So you aren't attached to a rope. So if you try some dynamic movement at the top and slip, you could definitely fall and hurt yourself. So you have to be a little more cautious on that. But all 5 of my kids love climbing and they're really, really good at it.
Now, you say you also have 5 kids, which I did not know till I read your bio. So can you just go over their ages real quick?
See, that's like a really mean question. Okay. Ariel, 14. Anna is 12. Elijah is 11. Maya is 9. And Samuel is 7.
So from 7 to 14, that's the ranges. And they all like rock climbing.
They all like it and are really gifted at it.
That's good. I've tried it once and I couldn't go. And that's because I'm probably a bigger guy and just hard to lift my own weight. So that did not go very well. So, maybe in my next life when I'm skinnier, I'll do some rock wall climbing. So, but anyway, let's talk about you and what you do and how you help dentists. So the first question I have for those that, we're all about branding our businesses, and you have a nice shirt. I have your swag for the event, which was pretty cool. Let's talk about Zana. Talk about what it does, how it works, give the idea regarding that, because a lot of people may not know what it is.
Right. So basically, I found a really great electric toothbrush that I was able to develop with my dad. And we ended up having this brush. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, people would ask me, like, Shawn, are you seriously crazy enough to compete with Sonicare and Oral-B? And I'm like, no, actually, I don't want to compete with them. So if I can create different rules to the game, rules that only I can compete on, well, then I have a chance of winning. Len, I knew that dentist friends of mine weren't staying awake at night wondering what electric toothbrush do they offer in their practice. Like, no one cares about that, but they were staying awake wondering what patients are coming back. How can I elevate the care that I'm giving to my patients, and how can I really connect with them and give them like a world-class experience? So that's really what Zana is about. It's how do I help a dental practice create a remarkable patient experience using an electric toothbrush.
You mentioned Oral-B and Sonicare, which are the 2 players. I mean, obviously there's Burst, there's Goby, there's all these other companies that have some sort of electric toothbrush out there. So what I really want people to understand is what makes you different. Let's put it that way.
Just to get out of the way, since we are talking to dental professionals, the brush is freaking amazing. It has the best battery on the market, 48,000 vibrations per minute. I don't really care about all those features, but they're there. And it's necessary that, dental professionals around the country love the brush. But my whole dream was, Len, what if a brush could be more than a brush? And how is it more than a brush? So there's two different options. One is if a patient of yours is just like, hey, I want to know what brush do you guys recommend? There's hygienists and dentists that recommend our brush. And there's a program with that called Carry Behind the Chair, and I can get into that in just a moment. But the main thing that sets us apart is that my whole belief is that practices spend indiscriminately to try to attract new patients. And they don't know a lot of data about those new patients. They don't know if those new patients are going to be a fit. They don't know if those new patients are even going to love their practice, but they have a lot of data on existing patients. So I'm saying, hey, if you run some reports and you find out that you have some rock star patients, those ones that have already written reviews, those ones that have already made some referrals, those ones that as they're leaving the practice, they can't shut up about you guys. They're saying, everyone by name. They just have that charm. They love you. Well, come up with a list. And what do? You give us that list and you say, okay, send 5 of these patients per month a gift from us. So these patients out of nowhere, just because, receive a gift in the mail on behalf of the practice. And they open it up. And most of the time they're bewildered. They're like, did I order this? Am I getting charged for this? And then they realize it's a gift from their dental professional. Now they open up this beautifully designed box, and inside they see a custom insert that's speaking directly to them, that they're not just a patient, but they belong to that practice, that they're family. And they remove that insert and they see their name laser engraved on the brush. Now, the practice name's also laser engraved, or the practice logo is also laser engraved on the brush. And there's the promise that that patient, when they return to the practice, gets free replacement heads for life. It's like the ultimate, you're part of our family and we are going to commit to your oral care. And that's why the program's called Carry Behind the Chair. So our whole thing is if you can take a patient that likes you or even loves you and light a bigger fire underneath them, they are 100% going to be the champions for your practice.
Now, to be very upfront, I received a toothbrush from somebody in the industry, and I did not know I was getting it. So it was a surprise gift for some. I can't remember what it was exactly for, but they sent me one of your toothbrushes, and I opened it up, and my name was laser engraved on there, as well as my logo for my Tao Dental Consulting. And it really meant a lot to me. So I think I experienced what a patient would think. And I think that's a really great way to give the patient a remarkable patient experience when you send them this toothbrush. So we'll get into the economics and stuff down the road when we talk a little bit more about it. But I think that's great. I think it's a really unique way of changing the model for the patient experience. But I want to transition from that into why you believe a remarkable patient experience is crucial. I'm all about patient experience. I talk about that every single day because I talk about raving patients. I talk about how to treat them well. I talk about why you have to go beyond their expectations, how you have to underpromise and overdeliver to really create this remarkable experience. So can you go into some ideas as why you believe a remarkable patient experience is critical to keep the patients coming back for more?
Yeah. And Len, I just want to honor you for the fact that you've been such a forerunner. You've been such a pioneer trumpeting these concepts and truly embodying them. And I think that's amazing. So the thing is, you go into most dental practices and the services that are offered are fairly the same, meaning you can get a crown in most practices around the country. So when it comes to delivering a remarkable patient experience, how do you get your services and your practice out of what I would call the commoditization zone? Because if it's viewed as a commodity, according to the economic rules of commodities, the lowest price wins. So I like the visual picture of what I call the mailbox moment. And the mailbox moment is something that I go through all the time. I love getting the mail. I love seeing what I have. And I always end up seeing some sort of new patient special from one of the practices in my area code. And when I'm looking at that new patient special, that rock bottom new patient special. What is it designed for? Like, I'm a marketer. I know it's designed to break patient loyalty. So if your patients are looking at that and they don't see the faces of a team or a dentist or a hygienist in the practice that's connected with them where they feel like they belong, then your practice is simply a commodity and lowest price wins. And I just think the time, the energy, the intentionality that dentists put into their practice, the sacrifices that they've made, that they deserve to be more than a commodity. They deserve to be, just a unique expression of what that dentist believes about dentistry and what they believe about advancing care and what they believe about giving the patient the best. And that's why it's incumbent on them to create those remarkable patient experiences. I just think they're worth it. Like they put so much time and energy and invested so much into it. Like to give your patient anything less than that, it's not worth it.
I think that's great to hear, because you talk about the commoditization of the industry. And, look, there's really a couple different types of practice models that are out there. You've got, I'm going to go, fee for service, all insurance, high end, no insurance, all high end. And then you've got the ones who say, I'm going to go the insurance model. I'm going to do, I don't want to say quality over quantity or vice versa, but they're taking all the insurances to really serve as a marketing technique to bring patients into their practice. The goal when you take insurance is to bring more patients into the practice who have that insurance. And thus, I always like looking at it as a marketing expense rather than, an insurance expense. You're using that as a marketing method. So I think because you can go, and as you said, you can go to some place that charges $500 for a crown, $1,000 for a crown, $2,000 for a crown. And I think if you have this fee-for-service model where patients are paying you in full for treatment, you don't take insurance, you have to give them an experience that's worth talking about. Because what I've learned over the years, people will talk about experiences when it's remarkably good or it's remarkably bad, but they'll be more so inclined to talk about it when it's remarkably bad. And you have to make the experience that you have that much better, or they're not going to talk about it at all. So in this case, when a dentist who is a fee-for-service practice chooses to send one of their favorite patients a toothbrush with their name engraved on it, as well as the practice logo, that helps create this incredible patient experience. And in my opinion, loyalty, because they know that if they don't come back, not that a $10 or $15 toothbrush head is going to keep them loyal, but they know when they come back into the practice that they're going to get a free head from this practice basically for life. So I've been a huge fan of that. I actually, when I sold toothbrushes in the practice, which didn't last very long, and the reason why I didn't last very long was I'd buy 10 or 15 brushes. It would take me 8 months or a year to sell them all. And then I was tying up all that capital in other things. So, if I stopped selling toothbrushes, but when I did sell toothbrushes, I was offering them free heads for life when they came back as a patient loyalty thing. So I completely understand that model. Okay. Completely understand it. So I want to move into another section of what we wanted to talk about, which is more around marketing. And in your space, what you see as common marketing mistakes or mistakes dentists make around marketing in their practice?
Well, again, I think one of them is what I was saying about this idea that we're spending indiscriminately, like where we don't really know who we're going to get in, but we're not willing to double down on people we already know are great. Like it is a marketing expense to invest in your best patients. And I think that often gets neglected. Another thing I see is that practices haven't identified what that correct brand narrative is for them, for their practice, for the culture that they want to keep in their practice. So some of them are like Whole Foods or Nordstrom practices that are still attracting Walmart shoppers. And then the patients come and they wonder why things are so expensive, or there's just a general disconnect. And it's like, you don't want to do that. You want your marketing to be in alignment with whatever that brand promise is. So there's resonance. If there's dissonance, people, they don't necessarily know why, but there's just this general sense of indifference that they feel because there's not a real connection. Plus people have really like in tune BS meters, and they can tell when they walk into a practice and they realize like, this isn't real. Like maybe this practice is trying to be something it's not. but I can tell it's not aligned. I can tell they're not really in agreement. Something just feels off. And I think that's often when dentists are still stuck modeling what they think they need to be doing instead of having the courage and the boldness and conviction to just be who they are, the best version of themselves in practice. Like you were super courageous about like, this is who I am. This is the way I'm going to do dentistry. And like it or not, this is me. And patients that connected to you are going to love you and have that loyalty because you are unashamedly having the courage to just be like, this is me, take it or leave it. And I think that's actually difficult for dental professionals to do when they feel like they have to be somebody. They, maybe it's the person that they respected. And it's like we all start off modeling, but at some point we have to leave that behind and just own who we are in dentistry. And I think that's a challenge at times.
It's interesting you said that about being who you are in practice and stuff. And I was exactly who I was in real life. I respond to messages immediately. I wanted to brand my practice in a certain way. So when I was able to in the very beginning, I grew my practice literally by going to oral surgeon's office for a consult with the patient. I escorted them or I went with them to help close the case. I mean, these are things that I kind of branded myself as. I was not into insurances. We barely, we took assignment of benefit with some of them. Otherwise, patients were paying us in full. And I had a higher fee to enter into my office, but I was very successful because I backed it up with the way we did things in the practice. And I think again, that's the way I branded myself. But I think there's this big challenge around creating an authentic brand in dentistry and being who you are versus something that's fake that's very hard to keep up. So can you talk about that, where this challenge exists with branding in dental practices?
Yeah. I mean, so the roots of this in my life, Len, came from relationships. I would see my brother and I would see that he was like the Bill Gates of dating in the sense that he wasn't loaded, but he was loaded with everything a woman would want. He was just handsome, strong, popular, charismatic. And at times I'd be like, Michael, you can't show people your wealth right off the bat, or else you don't know if they're falling in love with you or just what you offer. But the way that I distilled it for me is I was like, okay, so if I have to perform, if I have to fake it to get someone to like me, well, then I might need to fake it the rest of my life to keep them. But if I can somehow find a way to just discover who I am and rest in that, now, not be lazy about it, but still be the best version that's still authentic to me. And if someone falls in love with that, I'll never have to perform or fake it a day in my life. So the origin of this origin of authentic branding was relationships for me, because that's what I cared most about. Like I went to college looking for a wife. So when all of a sudden now I'm learning about marketing and I'm learning about branding, it's kind of making sense to me. It's like, man, there's this author, Neil Gaiman, and he has a masterclass if anyone's attached to masterclass and has that service. And he's a fiction writer, but he talks about the truth that's in fiction. And it's a really fascinating clip where he talks about, in order to actually write fiction that has truth and conviction in it, it's like walking down the street in front of everybody, like naked, and bearing yourself to the world and letting them judge you however they might. And there's some aspect of that in how a dentist actually comes to just own who they are unashamedly, unapologetically. And there's power in that. And so I'm not advising people to show up and practice naked. I just thought I'd clarify that.
Got it. So you have a podcast, a newer podcast that's called Innovation in Dentistry. I was a guest on there. I don't know when it's going to be released, but I know at some point my episode will be released. So I'm curious. One of the things we wanted to talk about was why innovation stifles in dentistry. So where do you think innovation causes hiccups in dentistry?
Innovation stifles in dentistry simply because I think most dentists are just highly risk averse, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you don't want to take on risk and increase liability when it comes to clinical dentistry. Like, bad idea. I don't think anyone's like, hey, play around in your patient's mouth, experiment, take on high risk. But on the business side of things, I see dentists kind of saying, okay, what are the best practices? And best practices are awesome, but they can also be misleading because they're like, I want to be different. I want to be unique. I want to go where people haven't gone before. I want to push the envelope. but then I do what everyone else does. And it's like, well, you can't have both. But it really does take courage, Len, to pioneer. It takes courage to bet on yourself. It takes courage to go where no one's gone before. And a lot of that, I don't know, you know what I mean? Dentists don't have an MBA. So it's not like they maybe have the frameworks or the tool sets to know how to do that. I think the dentists that are visionaries or entrepreneurial, more like yourself, are the ones that actually end up leading, like Glenn Vo. You guys are the ones that end up leading because you're not just good clinically. You have the ability to communicate, to lead, to influence, and some measure of, I fear, I'm more afraid of what happens if I don't do something than what happens if I do something and look foolish. And I think that the way people view failure has a lot to do with why people don't step up and step out.
I agree with that. I really do. I know we talked about toothbrushes in the beginning and how you kind of, talk about the patient experience and why you need to make it remarkable. Can you just briefly talk about what brought you into the toothbrush business? I know your dad is someone in the dental supply business, but can you kind of just talk about that before we move into our Q&A during the podcast? Why are you in the toothbrush business is really what I want to know.
So it was one of those things that I really actually wanted to go straight into ministry out of high school. And my parents are like, Shawn, you can do whatever you want with your life after you get an education because we've invested in you up to this point. And I was like, great idea. So I go to college, and in the midst of that, I again find this amazing woman that I want to marry. And my dad's like, hey, you should be able to provide for your family. And at that time, I'm seeing my dad and the sacrifices he's made and this company that he's built. And I'm like, you know what? Like, it would be a great opportunity for me to work with my dad. So it was just this very long process of me working with my dad, learning I don't like being simply a salesperson or a marketer. And I learned then design, and then I got into HR and learned logistics and supply chain and everything that could surround a business. I just taught myself so I could be the best owner. And eventually out of that came a business that I released into dentistry, and it just drastically failed. So Zana is like version 2 or my second go round. But Len, really, the reason I'm still in dentistry is because of amazing dentists that I got to connect with. When I was first in dentistry, way back when, I would ask dentists, hey, how you doing? How are things going? I was looking for some sense of struggle or authenticity and honesty. And everyone's like, oh, I'm just crushing it. Dentistry's, it's just easy. I'm just, my best life yet. And I didn't know how to relate to that because I was struggling running a business, and yet I didn't sense dentists were. This is, again, 12 years ago. And then I met some amazing people like Dr. Allison House and Dr. Chris Volchek that just had the courage to be real. And that made me think, if I can find more people like them and I can connect to the people in dentistry, I can stay in dentistry a long time. Because if my heart's not connected to the people of an industry, then I don't really care. I'm not here to just go through the motions. I really want to know that what I'm doing at the end of the day is helping people.
So before we move into the Q&A, is there anything else that you would like to either bring up or talk about related to the podcast?
Again, this might be a tough thing to end on, but let's just go for it. Just tell me if I'm wrong with this, because I'd love your perspective. I feel like dentistry is in a really interesting, I wouldn't call it a crossroads, but just a really difficult time. The way that I see it, inflation is causing patients to have less discretionary income. So they're feeling this pressure. Post-COVID, we have a lot of team members that exited dentistry. So now all of a sudden, supply is low, demand is high. So these team members are now wanting to get paid more. You have insurance companies that are lowering premiums, so margins are getting compressed. Like, dentists must be freaking out right now, trying to go fee for service. But even that, I just feel like it's never been I shouldn't say never. It is a very difficult time right now in dentistry. And that's where I feel like in moments like this, it's actually the best time for those people that see the pain and see a solution to lead. Like, I think this is actually the perfect time for pioneers to pioneer and say, hey, look, I have a solution, like, follow me. And not everyone has the complete solution, but whatever piece of the puzzle they have, my piece is double down on your best patients. let them become a raving fan, because a raving fan is worth 9 times more to your practice than an ordinary patient. So run the list, identify who they are and double down on them. That's one of my gifts right now to dentistry. But I know there's a lot of gifts that people don't know about yet, just because people aren't getting up and leading. So I guess that's my challenge, like get up and lead. But was there anything in that assessment that I missed out, Len, that you feel is also adding pressure to the doc or dentist owner right now?
Well, I think all things, overhead costs, everything's going up. You have to bring new patients into your practice. New patients are the lifeblood to the practice. If you don't bring new patients in, you struggle, and then you claim you can't spend money to market because you don't have the money, but you have to market to bring new patients in. So it's like the cyclical thing that becomes major problems for practice owners. So, I did want to ask you one more question in regards to your product. I said we would talk about the economics behind gifting a toothbrush to a really good patient of yours. So can you talk to the audience about kind of the costs involved with buying a toothbrush, sending it out? What are the costs involved with that for someone who is using your services?
Okay, that's a great question. So interestingly, I read this book, Giftology, and I read it after I came up with all this. Corinne, I don't know how to say Corinne's last name, but he's like, dude, have you read this book? I was like, no, I don't know anything about it. So I read it, and it's all about how you get referrals and loyalty, and you unlock it through gifting. And then there's this criteria of like 8 things that a gift should do ideally, and how most gifts don't do that. And I was dumbfounded that like my gift met 7 of those 8. Like, is it best in class? Is there continuity? Is it visible? Is it practical? And I'm saying that because is it best in class? Like, it compares to a Sonicare Diamond Clean. Amazing brush. Again, all these modes, amazing battery life. So it retails for $200 to $220. But for this gift option, for it to be customized, custom insert, laser engraved with the promise of free replacement heads for life, it starts at $129. Like, that's it. Now, if you look at the numbers, like for anyone that knows baseball, all you need to do is actually bat 100, which means if you identify 10 patients, if just one of them becomes more of a raving fan than they already were because of this gift, you almost like break even. So if you can bat 300, 3 out of 10, you are 100% getting like a 300% ROI. So you don't have to be 10 for 10. I think a lot of people think, well, what if this person doesn't freak out over it and tell anyone about it? I have one dentist right now that literally, she has a patient that won't receive treatment, but has referred 10 people to her this year. So that's the power.
Yeah, you're way ahead at that point. So, all right, good. That was the economics behind it. So, in the time we have remaining, I want to switch to my Q&A. We'll get through 8 to 10 of them, and then we'll close the podcast. So first off, what eats up most of your time that you'd like to change?
Finding team members, maybe. I love relating to the team members. I love being part of it, but sometimes finding the next good one is a challenge, and that drives me crazy.
Okay. How do you define success?
I find success of arriving at the top of a mountain and looking around and having everybody that you love right there. It's not reaching some summit or some destination and realizing you're alone because you're Machiavellian and the ends justify the means. If 100% I don't have the hearts of those people that I love, including my children, then there's no way I could be successful. So 100%, I got to be surrounded by the people that I love and doing something that is completely fulfilling.
That's good. I like that. What would you say are the top 3 skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
You have to 100% believe and have crazy conviction in what you're doing. You have to be a team player and be able to lead and inspire a vision in other people. If you can't broker trust, you're dead in the water. And then you need to be dependable. You need to be able to depend on yourself, and you need to be able to allow other people to depend on you. Or else you can't make the dream come true.
Great. What book have you read multiple times that you recommend everybody reads?
Gosh, probably one of the Seth Godin books. I can't think of which one, but just anything by Seth Godin. I love the way he writes in such an inspiring way.
All right, that works. Do you keep a journal, and does it help you?
I love journaling. I started in high school. Any season of my life where I'm disconnected and fragmented are seasons of my life when I don't journal. So 100%, it helps defrag my mind.
All right, this is a tough one. If you had a magic wand, what are 3 things you would change in the world?
I don't know, because I would not remove struggle. I think struggle is absolutely necessary for people to discover where they're at. I think the world is beautiful. There needs to be pain. There needs to be problems. There needs to be challenges, or else we don't have a chance to shine. So I don't know.
Nothing wrong with that. That's a good answer. I like what you answered that. So you answered that differently. So if you were to do your business again, what would you do differently?
Oh my God. Okay, this one's so easy. I would have launched right away before I even had anything. I would launch and keep launching and keep launching. What does that mean? I would put up web pages. I would tell people what I'm doing. I would pre-sell something. I would do as much as I could to interact with the market first to get feedback before theorizing and planning and perfectly trying to come up with something for a year and a half, 2 years. Get traction, talk to the marketplace early and often.
Describe Mondays for you in 1 word.
Massive action. Oh shit, that's 2 words.
That works. This one's tough. If you had to open up a lemonade stand tomorrow, what would you call the stand?
Lenny's Lemonade. I would name it after
Lenny's
you.
Lemonade. Yeah, that's nice. All right, last question. I asked this to everyone to see if you had to give up one subscription, which one would you cannot live without?
I have so many subscriptions. I don't know. Maybe Masterclass.
All right. So, Shawn, how can people find out more about you or more about Zana and what you can do for their business? What's the best way for them to reach out?
myzana.com is the website, or email me, Shawn@myzana.com, or just find me on Facebook.
Okay. And Shawn, just so everybody knows, it's spelled SHAWN @myzana.com. And there will be some type of offer that you give. We'll put it in the show notes. So when this episode releases, they're going to have a special offer to people who listen to the Raving Patients podcast or watch it on YouTube, correct?
Absolutely.
Shawn, thank you so much for joining me today. Guys, if you like the episode, please share it. If you want to learn more about Zana, please reach out to Shawn and his team to learn more about what they can do for your business. And as I end all of my podcasts, webinars, seminars, you name it, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, thanks for everyone. And Shawn, we'll talk to you everybody soon.